Welcome to Corporate Therapy, the podcast where we unpack the dumb shit businesses do. We ask the big juicy questions like why, what were they thinking, and then we chase down the answers. Today we're exploring why it's so bloody hard to find talent. Why don't we just build it in-house? I'm Matt, a business designer, which is a fancy way of saying I'm a corporate plumber fixing the crap in business.
And I'm Rob, and I've had a painful curiosity about how people work for the last 28 years or so. So we're looking forward to getting into this. So Matt, tell us a little bit about why there's a talent shortage.
You just hijacked the question there, Rob. I was sure I was going to be asking that of you.
I was changing it up a bit.
Right. Can you please repeat the question? Because I completely got sideswiped on that one.
So Matt, let's kick off about talking about why you think there's a talent shortage at the moment.
Well, it's a curious one because I go hang out with the boards and they're saying, "Oh, this is brilliant. The market's finally turning, and we're going to finally be able to have talent lining up to join us." But I pause and I watch the news and kind of a bit of mixed signals. Like, in fact, last night saying the job market's still really strong. Go jump on a few websites and they're saying, "Well, it's kind of softening a little bit," and you're like, "Well, that's code for not a lot's really changing." But then I go hang out with the shop floor and with the people who are trying to actually hire folks. And they're like, I'm screaming out for talent. Yes, the number of applications I've got is going up. No two ways about that. But I'm not actually finding the talent I'm looking for. What's been your experience in that, Rob?
So I think
what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's been similar. I think I was listening to the ABC News yesterday, and they were talking about the job market getting better and 64,000 new people employed in the last month and so on. So the news is definitely telling us that things are looking up for employees. But when I talk to employers, they're saying, yeah, I can get people, but they're not the right people. They're not the unicorns that I'm looking for. They're not the people with the skill sets that I'm after, or something along those lines. I'm hearing a lot from a couple of friends of mine that are looking for jobs at the moment, that the market's still pretty thin. There's not much out there that really lights their fire. And I think maybe as employees over the last sort of 15 or 20 years, we've got used to being a little bit picky as well. And maybe we, from an employee side, we're trying to tone that down a little bit.
But when I look at some of the folks that I chat to, who are absolute top talent, amazing people, they are making literally hundreds of applications and not even getting a peep back, right?
Yeah.
They're not even getting a response or a question. They're smart folks. They're looking at, you asked for this job description of X, these are the skills, like I've nailed that, this is what I've got. Now, to me, they're struggling to understand why are they not even getting a callback, and I'm struggling to even offer them any support or advice because I have no answers for that. But when I flip that and look at what's happening on the employer side with those vacancies that are in place, right? The pain that's actually kicking in for them is their staff are having to bear the brunt of that vacancy. Please just carry that workload, right? What's been your knock-on effect of vacancies staying open for long? What are you seeing that create for teams, Rob?
Yeah, I see this quite a lot at the moment. And the key thing is something that's sort of surprised me, or at least surprised me from a realization perspective, is you used to ask people how they were on a Monday morning. How was your weekend? And they'd go, good. Even if they had the worst weekend on the planet, they'd just go, good. It's a knee-jerk answer to the question. Whereas when I ask people how work is, anything work related at all, what I get is, I'm busy. I'm real busy, mate. And it's just, it's the snap answer. It's the answer that's expected. But it's become more and more of a reality as time goes on. It used to be that we just thought, I better be busy or my boss will give out to me or whatever. But now it's, in a lot of organizations, it's because there are these vacancies that have been open and stayed open for a long time. So you're being expected as an employee to pick up the job of the person next to you, or you're stepping into your boss's role in an interim way until we find someone new. But you're also being expected to do all of the business as usual that you did in your own role before. The amount of people I hear that go, well, my substantive role is this, but I'm acting in this role at the moment. I'm like,
Yep.
wow, okay. And how long have you been doing that? Oh, for 2 years now. Excuse me. So I'm hearing quite a lot of that. But to me, that's a real issue. That's how you burn out a person. That's how productivity drops off. Because as my great hero Ron Swanson said, never half-ass two things, always whole-ass one thing. So when you're trying to do 2 jobs, you're guaranteed to half-ass both of them. So I think the downside of that then is that we just get caught up in busy work. Yep. We don't have any time to step back and go, right, what can I actually do to fix this problem? How can I innovate around these roles? How can I innovate around these products or services that I'm responsible for, or whatever it is, and actually make a bit of progress on making it easier or quicker or faster or better or more seamless or whatever. So we just get caught in this busy loop, which is horrific as far as I'm concerned.
But it doesn't just affect staff. So we're talking about the leaders, we're talking about the staff. It also affects customers. I mean, how many times have you gone into a business and you're like, is anybody here at this point in time? And it's not that the leaders, the cafe owners, they're trying to undercut or lower the budgets. They literally can't find the talent to fill those roles. Absolutely. So it does have a significant knock-on, and it's not just in the cafes or restaurants. I think Forrester said like 36% of customers are actually been hit by the lack of staffing that are going through. So it's a widespread problem. But if we move on now and take a moment to think about why can't we find talent? Like, what's your hypothesis you've got as to why is it that leaders are throwing up the job ads and yet not getting the magic?
So I don't think this has changed much. I think it's just come into sharper relief. Yeah. It's the same stuff that we have always complained about as employees. We're just complaining about it a bit more now. Yep. A lot of that is around the reputation of the employer.
Yep.
So, like I said, a couple of friends of mine looking for roles at the moment, and what I'm surprised to hear, surprised is the wrong word, but what I am hearing is them saying, "Oh, well, I'd love to work for that company, but they've got their finger in this pie, and that's an ethical dilemma for me."
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Thinking about working for an organization that manages pubs and clubs. Yep. And they were like, oh, well, yeah, they promote the poker machines in pubs. They promote gambling. So I'm not sure I can get involved with that. So, but that's a more external reputation. There's also the reputation that you hear from the people that already work there who go, we're going to tell you that we have this awesome culture in the place, but really it's toxic as all hell. So it's easier, I think, nowadays for us to find people that are on the inside that can tell us whether the reputation of the organization is true or not. And to me, that's a big deal. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, building on that, for me, we do all this amazing work to create beautiful brands that are often orientated toward customers. And yes, over the last couple of years, we've talked about building employer-led brands that are coming in there where employees can't wait to hang out with them. But the funny thing is, employees have at their disposal a number of tools. One is they do check out your social media. They do look at your product reviews and they go, wait a minute, you're saying you're awesome, but what the hell's going on over here? So I think the ability for staff to be able to call bullshit on that, it means that you're not only going to not always get the applicants you're going to see, they're going to be much more informed going into those interviews as to whether you're calling bullshit in the interview as well. And in fact, I was reading an interesting stat that something like 46% of candidates pull out or don't accept the offer that's coming through after it's gone through, right? So there's a bit of you either lowballed me on the offer or like what you're saying and what I'm feeling are two very, very different things. But I've just thought about the lowballing offers there. What rumors, facts you're seeing around the pay side of things? Because there's two parts to that equation. What's your take there, Rob?
Yeah, no, everybody thinks the pay is wonderful at the moment and that it's at exactly the right level that they want it to be. Mate, I've never met anybody in my entire life who was offered a pay rise and went, you know what? No, thanks, I'm good. but Pay's an interesting one at the moment. I think, and this is just gut feel. I've got no research to back this up. But I think a lot of organizations are using flexibility as a way of pushing pay down a little bit. That's what I seem to have noticed anyway, is that because they're offering you the opportunity to work from home or work remote or what have you, they're like, well, I'm not going to pay you as much because you're not going to be in the office. I know we spoke about flexibility last time on our podcast and the whole return to work thing. But I've seen organizations use that as a way of dropping the pay a little bit. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to go, yeah, that's enough. but they are continually talking about how pay still sucks. I'd love to do that job, but it's just not at the level that I need it to be at. Are you seeing that with the flexibility thing as well?
On the flexibility side, I think they talk about staff appeared to take like up to a 10 to 12% pay cut for flexibility. So there's evidence to actually say they're open to that. But I think the flip side is if your pay was shit to start with for a lot of people, or the fact that inflation is just getting out of control, that's where people are saying, hey, I need to look for jobs that are going to actually help me to be able to pay the bills. And I think 1 in 4 of us are really struggling to pay bills at the moment. And so pay normally, they talk, you won't move or shift for pay. Well, I reckon that's kind of moved on, and people are saying, I literally can't afford to balance my rent or my food bills at the moment. And it's hitting a lot of different families. Mortgages here in Australia are bonkers. So the pay conversation is very front and center for people. I think when I chat to employers, though, like they are generally trying to pass on how can I actually make sure what I'm offering is of fair value to attract the candidates. But they haven't budgeted for the pay increases that are being demanded, right? And for certain roles, whether they be specialists, whether they be in cybersecurity or areas which have a technology bent, then you're having to pay more of a top dollar to be able to attract them. And that's where it really, really, really creates a knock-on effect, because what I see them do is cheat. What they do is they go, okay, this person in this specialist role needs or wants X dollars. What I'm going to do is I'm going to merge that with 3 other roles that are going in there and put it all in the one, because that means I don't need to pay for 3 roles because I only have budget to pay for 1. Yeah. And that has another knock-on effect where that unicorn you just spoke about there, Rob, like this person's going to be a designer, they're going to be a product manager, they're going to be able to make coffee, tea, and dessert all in the one session. It's like, mother of Mary. What's your take, though, on unicorn expectations there, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I think most employers that are looking for unicorns like that are kind of delusional. You don't. I think we'll talk about this a little later, but you don't get unicorns like that by hiring them externally. You get unicorns like that by building them internally. Okay. At least that's my take on it. But I think that the danger of looking for somebody who ticks all of the boxes that you're looking for, and being kind of ruthless about that and going, well, I'm not taking them unless they've got all of these things. Yep. Is something that you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot. The other thing that's interesting is there's a bit of research there that says that and it's one of the differences between between male and female candidates, is that male candidates will apply for a job if they tick about 70-80% of the boxes, whereas female candidates will only apply for the job if they get somewhere between 90 and 100%. So if you're asking for somebody to tick all of the boxes that you've put on your job ad, you're actually alienating more female applicants than you are male applicants. The males will give it a red hot go anyway, perhaps a little delusionally, but the females will wait until they have all the skills to apply for the gig. So if you're trying to find a unicorn, you're actually alienating more females in doing so.
But it's interesting, it said 70-80% is when a male will apply. I think you're the one being delusional. They cut off at 60%. I'm good to go, right?
Fair enough.
So I think it's a frustrating thing that dimension exists. But I also saw just last night on the ABC, they were talking about all the sort of the growth in the job placement or the job fulfillment they're seeing is coming from the female market. So there's more women applying for jobs that are going and getting them, which I think is a really positive thing that's happening. But I would like to shift gears and talk about recruitment for a moment and the actual process we use. I'm sure you love talking on this topic, Rob, but when you've chatted to your friends, chatting to your clients, and you're looking at what approach they take into recruitment, has anything really changed in the last 20 years?
No, not that I've seen anyway. I had the good fortune to work for a really awesome people and culture leader at one point. I've mentioned her before, Angela. And Angela had the recruitment process down to a fine art and drilled it into all of us. Simple little things like you don't let an applicant go into the weekend without telling them where we're up to. Yep. So we made a lot of calls on a Friday so that people could enjoy their weekends by either celebrating the fact that they'd got a new job or drowning their sorrows when they hadn't, or knowing that their next step was on Tuesday when they got to meet so-and-so or whatever. We tried to keep them quick. Yep. And we tried to focus an awful lot on the basic technical skills that a person would need, but we were much more into a values and cultural fit. For the same reason as everybody else talks about this, you can teach people the technical side of the gig, but they've got to fit in the organization. But that's the only organization I think that I've seen do that really, really well. There are others that are having a red hot go at it, and more power to them, and they really should continue that. But your average recruitment process sucks. You're not sure where you're going next. You're not sure how long it's going to be. It's confrontational in a lot of ways. You're being interviewed by a panel, which makes you feel like you're being interrogated. Yep. Whereas what a recruitment process should be is an opportunity for an employer or an employee to come together and go, hey, do we actually really want to hang out together? Is this good for you? Because I think you might be right for this. And for us to have an open dialogue where the employee gets to interview the employer just as much as vice versa.
Sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead.
Just one thing that sparked in me is when those interviews are happening, though, I see a lot of, especially government clients, saying we need to have a script, and it is a script, not a guide. It is literally, these are the questions you'll ask at this point in time to the candidate in verbatim, word for word. What's your take on whether what's the pros or cons of actually using that approach?
The one pro that I can see is consistency. Is that every candidate is being asked the same questions, so you can have a very focused way of trying to decide who answered that question the best. But that's the only upside of it as far as I'm concerned. Something like that, a script. When I hear about a script in an interview, what pops into my head straight away is psychologists say there are really only two things that motivate you: love and fear. Yeah, that's a fear motivator right there. My question to that employer would be, what are you afraid of? What are you trying to solve for here? And I don't know whether it's that they're worried about being accused of discrimination in an interview or something along those lines, but there's some sort of a fear motivator there. The unfortunate thing is, in order to deal with that fear, what they're doing is making their recruitment process suck. Nobody's going to walk into, well, won't say nobody, but not a lot of people I know are going to walk into a room with somebody who's reading questions off a script and go, yes, this is the place for me. You need a connection, right? There has to be a human element to it.
Spot on. And for me, that's the bit that doesn't work there is you need to, the conversation's going to go in different ways for you to understand the real person. You want to show that you're building on what they've just given you so that it actually builds trust, a sense of understanding and empathy for it. So I do worry that the way that we're still employing out of, we want to be fair, which I agree is an important part of the puzzle, but you're absolutely stuffing up the interview process from it. You also touched on comms there, Rob. Like, I don't know what's going on and where are things up to. It's one of the biggest killers to the relationship, but it really hurts people. Like I've chatted to individuals saying, I've applied, I've heard nothing. Like zilch at that point. And they'd rather have a no or, hey, this is not right or this hasn't worked for us at that point than absolutely zero communication. Add to that, though, I think a couple of things are changing in the way that technology is coming into the way our recruitment's impacting our ability to get talent. We're now doing a lot more of AI-based screening of resumes that are coming through. So I'm really curious for what biases or for what approaches we're actually making those decisions on. Jury's out. Still yet to see on what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
But when it comes to employers going, okay, so what are my options here in finding talent, right? Because it's currently not really working for me. What could I do differently? What choices do you see leaders having in the items they can change to be able to secure talent?
The first thing I think they need to do is just start telling the truth. No, I mean that seriously. When you're talking about, when your job ad's up there, make sure it's absolutely indicative of the position. There's a friend of mine who's looking for customer experience based jobs at the moment, and he's at a reasonably senior level. And he's like, the amount of customer experience roles I've looked into where he should be the head of customer experience, it should be his job to manage the customer experience from start to finish. And when he goes and applies for the job or looks into it, what he finds out is it's not a customer experience gig. It's a customer service gig, right? It's him basically managing a call center, which is not what he wants to do. So don't call it a head of customer experience position if it's a call center manager gig. So I think a proper tweaking of job ads so that the truth is out there is a big deal. What do you think are some of the options that
I reckon to build on the ad that you've got there, the easiest test is pull out your latest employee engagement survey that you've done, put that beside your job ad and go, what am I promising here and what is the reality here? I seriously encourage all leaders to do that because it gives you an immediate answer. Are you bullshitting people? Because what will happen is they will join your organization and they'll leave within the first 6 months. And you've just burnt a whole lot of cash and impacted people's lives because you weren't upfront during that job ad. I think I was reading one of the stats, close to 78% of businesses know that they're bullshitting on ads, right? So can we not be a little bit more clean? I think the second thing for me would be around where we look for talent that's coming in that space. So we right now I'm looking for a videographer. Point in case we suck at video editing, need some help. And my immediate gut reaction is I want to find somebody local. And I had to pause and catch myself and go, hold on, why is it that I want local? It's the ability to interact and trust. Well, Matt, you've been working remotely for years now. What's that all about? So I think you have to check yourself of what some of your personal biases are when looking for talent. Because as a videographer, it shouldn't matter whether they're in the UK, Mudgee, or here in Brizzy. I think the other one, though, is when you're looking for talent that's out there is what biases do you have around whether it be gender, whether it ends up being around their background or level of experience. Do they really need those paperwork or the degrees or the qualifications? It's interesting, the big four consulting companies say, no, we no longer need the qualifications, but I look at who's still walking through those doors. I'm like, they sure look pretty qualified to me. I think the bit I'd be curious though is around, you've talked on unicorns before, Rob. Do the organizations need to adapt their expectations?
Yeah, they need to lower them. That's well. This is it. And again, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later on. But I'm a firm believer in the fact that those unicorns are not found external to your business. You grow them internally.
Yep.
But the issue is, if you go out looking for a unicorn, you're not going to find one. But if you're happy to settle for a horse and stick a horn on it later, you're good to go. And I think that's the thing is that people tend to, or employers tend to go, if in an ideal world, what would our perfect person look like? And it's exactly the wrong place to start. What you want to start with is, who do we need to get this job done?
Yep.
To a decent level. And then perhaps we can develop them internally to turn them into a unicorn. But I think realistically what they need to do is lower their expectations a bit and stop looking for the ideal candidate. Look for a good candidate and develop them into the ideal one.
I think the other option, though, that I see employers do is they go, crikeys, they see their team is burning and they know that's not cool. And they say, we need to get some contractors in here because we still need the work to actually get done. And this works for a period of time if you've got the budget to be able to do that. But normally, if it runs on for too long, somebody upstairs will start screaming, what are you doing with your budget? You need to let contractors go. And some of the government institutions we've got here in Australia may say, we need to start reducing the amount of contractors we actually have. And it's a belief we're going to offer some of these contractors full-time gigs. And it's like the pay rates are so different between those that it's like they're not actually attracting those contractors that are converting out, which in turn is then creating the gaps that they've got, which in turn is burning out the very talent that they're hoping to retain. But it then brings me to one of my favorite ones, which I'd love to get your take on, Rob, which is around this. Let's just redistribute the work to all the fellows that are already here.
Sure, yeah. So that we can burn out as many people as possible. This frustrates the hell out of me, Matt, because reasonably early on in my career, we mentioned our mutual friend Nigel before. Yeah, who said, I hired you to do this job because I thought you could do it in 40 hours, and you're here working 80 hours a week. So, but don't think you're impressing me. I thought you could do it in 40 hours. So you're either lying to me and you knew you couldn't, right? Or you're incompetent. You thought you could, but you can't. So which is it, lies or incompetence? And I'm like, ah. and then he sort of smiled and went, or you're covering up a resourcing issue. I had a boss back in 1999 who was very, very focused on the fact that there could be a resourcing issue in the organization if I was working more than 40 hours a week. And he hired people to take care of it. Yeah, he was like, well, maybe we need two of you. And he was very, very aware of that in 1999. I don't see bosses like that anymore. I don't see leaders like that anymore. I see it as a general acceptance of everybody's busy. So it doesn't matter how busy you are. We're just going to load stuff on you until you crack. And that's scary. There was another old boss of mine, David Leake, who used to say, when you're in a bucket of shit, it doesn't matter whether it's up to your ankles or up to your neck. What's important is that you get out of the bucket of shit. And this is the issue. It's like there's almost like, they're not too busy. They can handle it, so they're cool. No, what's important is that they get less busy, not that you keep redistributing work onto them until they get so busy that they break. We're doing damage to people's well-being and mental health by redistributing work and so on, things that make them busier. We need to manage the issue.
Which I'm always stunned that we'll talk so heavily about well-being, mental health, but then we don't look at capacity, resourcing, and what we're actually doing to overload. It's like, oh, that's a completely separate issue. No, they are fundamentally linked.
I spoke to a group of emerging leaders in an organization, and they were like, but how do you deal with busy? And I told them about something that an organization called Priority Management taught me, again, 25 years ago now, where I was like, you have an Outlook calendar. And when somebody asks you to do a piece of work, you pull it up and you go, yeah, next available slot is 3:00 on Thursday. Oh, well, I need it done now. Well, cool. At the moment, I'm doing this thing for Matt. So let's go talk to Matt and see if his thing can shift till Thursday at 3:00. And they'll go, no, it's okay. We don't need to bother Matt. I can wait. Or they'll go, actually, no, it's really urgent. Let's go bother Matt. And you sort of outsource the priority decision to the folks that are asking you to do the work.
Yeah.
And when I shared this with these emerging leaders, they were like, wow, as if I'd just shown them, here is the Holy Grail, where in fact what it was basic priority management. But they were like, hold on, we can do that?
Yeah.
So that says a little about people's comfort levels with busyness.
So we've said the options are pretty much tweak the job ads, lower your expectations, look in different places, redefine what talent is and be aware of your biases. You could hire some contractors. You could bury your staff with redistributing the work. But the one we haven't talked on is about developing or training your people. Why do you think we avoid training our staff in the first place?
That's a really good question. And it's one I've tried to build a career out of. There are 101 different excuses that people will use for not training their folks internally.
Yeah.
The big one is time. Because of this busyness thing, it's like, when am I going to have time to go to training? Or it's that on the outside, they're like, oh yes, we're really supportive of this. Off you go to training. But the day training comes around, I'm sorry, you can't go to training. I have this project that's urgent and needs to be done by tomorrow. So you're gone. So when like a trainer like me shows up and is expecting 25 people and there's 12, you're like, where's the rest? Oh, they got caught up in this horrific fire that they have to go and pee on now. Yep. So time is a big deal. And to me, that just shows a little bit of short-term thinking. If you're training somebody, you're trying to change their behavior in some way. You're trying to change their skill set or their knowledge in some way. And you've seen that as beneficial. So what you need to do is take a little bit of short-term pain for the long-term gain that you're going to get from it later. And we see this all the time. People are quite comfortable to do it with processes and systems and so on.
Yep.
Yeah, let's change this system. I know it's going to be a pain in the ass at the start, but it'll pay the dividends later on. The same with processes. But they rarely accept the same of knowledge change or behavioral change. We need to invest a little bit of time up front in order to save us a boatload later. Because again, the return on investment is hard to measure. So we don't like to even think about it. So that's a big one for me. What are you saying about folks avoiding training?
Do you think time is the issue, or is that the excuse, right? And the reason I'm out, and that's a loaded question I get there, because time, when you say I don't have time, it means you've chosen not to prioritize that time. It's you've got something else that you value more. And that a perfect example you gave where it's like, oh, yes, you can go to the training, but not today. That's coming at this point in time. Is one I've seen. And when I've dug into why is that actually occurring, it's because those leaders don't want to see their talent get ahead because they're worried that they're going to get poached. Right? They're worried that others are going to see that talent is actually kicking goals, and oh my God, that I really depend on this individual. I can't let others know this person's successful. I know it sounds crazy, but I do. It's like they're literally sabotaging almost themselves. It's going to this point, let alone the very talent. Am I mad here? I mean, what's your take on that, Rob?
No, I've certainly seen that. I've seen it both externally and internally. I've seen people go, well, there's that old story about the CEO and the CFO, where the CFO goes, well, what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO's, what if we don't and they stay? But that's it. I've heard people go, well, what's the point in giving people all this training when they're just going to leave us and go to somewhere that pays more? Yeah, I'm like, well, maybe you should fix your pay rates then, so the temptation isn't there. Maybe you shouldn't be seen as the organization that you just come to get trained so you can move on to your actual career. So I've seen that, but I've also seen what you're talking about internally, where people go, oh no, this person here, this is my secret little superhero, so I'm just going to put them in a hole somewhere and feed them a handful of muesli twice a week so they don't die. And aside from that, they're mine and nobody else shall even look at them. I have seen that. I find it terrifying. And again, I see it mostly in organizations that are more siloed, where it's like, this is my own little empire and I'm going to hold on to it. And these are the important people in my empire and I'm going to hold on to them too. In organizations that are less siloed, it's like, of course I want that person to move over there because then I've got somebody on the inside that owes me a few favors. Yep. where you actually see cross-pollination of talent throughout an organization. I've been in a situation, and this one's from a long time ago, where I had a guy who worked for me, and he had the most boring job on planet Earth. This was long before quality systems. His job was to listen to sort of 60, 70 call center calls a day and tick off on an Excel spreadsheet whether people were doing what they were supposed to do, and then give that feedback to team leaders and trainers so that they could fix any global issues that popped up. But you can imagine the joy of listening to 70 call center calls a day and ticking an Excel spreadsheet. So he was losing his mind, poor guy. Wonderful at his job, but losing his mind simply because it was a job with a fairly short shelf life. So I said, what do you want to do? And he goes, and he sort of smiled at me and went, I want to be the marketing director. And I was like, cool. And he was like, cool. I just told you I want to be the marketing director. I'm now a quality analyst. And I said, yeah, we can do the impossible. It just takes a little more time. I said, so what's our first step? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, have you got any skin in the game? He's like, well, yeah, I'm doing a marketing degree at the moment. I'm like, great. So what skills do you have that you think marketing would be able to use? And he goes, well, I don't think there's anything that's transferable from quality. And I'm like, do you see patterns in analysis? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you think that might be advantageous to a marketing team? So I got him a gig whereby on Friday afternoons every week, I got him for 4.5 days of the week. But on the half day of the week, he went and basically helped the marketing team out with being a marketing analyst. So when that job came up of him being the marketing analyst, he was a shoo-in for it. He'd been doing it a half day a week for the last God knows how many months. It meant that I got more work out of him. He got to develop. He got a career progression. I had time to find somebody else to replace him. It worked out for everybody concerned. Whereas if I had gone, no, you're mine, and tried to hold on to him, he would have lost his mind. I'm pretty sure if that actually lost his mind, I would have had to put him in a padded room. You know?
But it also took you getting to know him and understand his perspective, and also you have an amazing coaching capability. One of the challenges I see though is leaders not knowing how to coach, not knowing how to mentor or be in that space, but also not even feel comfortable to acknowledging they've got a problem in coaching or it's something that they need to grow or develop. What's been your experience in leaders and their coaching ability?
So I think this goes back, Matt, to what we were talking about with looking for unicorns.
Yeah.
But if you're hired as a leader in an organization, even a very junior leader in an organization, one of the requirements on the job ad that you signed off on will be coaching. Yeah. So when you get into an organization and go, I'm not that comfortable with coaching, they're like, hold on, but you said in the interview. The thing that frustrates the hell out of me about coaching, and this comes back to the time thing that we spoke about earlier, is it doesn't take it. It's kind of like learning to play the guitar. Yeah. It doesn't take long to start. You can learn G, C, and D, and then you can batter out 400 songs. Yeah. Now, if you want to be Jimi Hendrix or somebody like that, well, that takes a little bit more time. So it's not difficult to become a coach. It's difficult to master being a coach, but it's not difficult to become a coach and to learn to use the right question at the right time, which is all I did with this guy. What skills do you have that would be beneficial to the marketing team? To learn to ask the right question at the right time doesn't take long. I can teach you to do that in a day. But a lot of organizations won't take that day because they feel like it's a skill you should already have, or that leaders just innately get the moment they get manager in their title. It's a level up.
So you've just started to give some clues on what leaders can do to actually spot and develop talent. I want to make sure that we can leave the listeners with some real actionable takeaways as to what they can do to be able to spot talent, to develop them. What are some of your go-to tips? I'll start off with one and
Sure.
and then pass over to you. The first one for me is you kind of actually need to know what capabilities you actually need as an organization in your team and what you actually have. Now, normally the approach is we'll get some analyst to do that in a quiet room, in a quiet place it's going, and then it'll be this black ops squirrel that's going, and then staff go, hold on, what's that all about? And they worry about it. Whereas I'm currently working with an organization where I'm actually with the whole team. And we're like, okay, what are the capabilities we think we have? What's the evidence we believe that's true? What's the capabilities we know we've got zilch on and we're really worried about? Why is that? So it's actually an open discussion where we're using Mirror and the ability to be able to put up each of those capabilities and understand what's the knock-on effects that are occurring. That's not to say there are not blind spots where the team are going, oh, crikeys, we're brilliant at this, or we're terrible at this. And it's not, the evidence is not matching up. But again, if a leader or an analyst was to do this by themselves, they would also have blind spots. So I find doing it in open, getting those capabilities out on the table allows us to really look, okay, where should we invest? It also allows the leaders to have a conversation with the team. We can't fill all the capabilities. We don't have that kind of cash available to us. Which ones would we go for first, second, and third? And so that actually involves the team in being able to make those trade-offs. What's your take, though, on what leaders can do to spot and develop talent?
There's a few things that I have in mind here, but probably one of the most important ones is to turn off your perfectionism and start looking at potential.
Yep.
It's almost like we expect that when somebody hits a leadership role or that they're going to be perfect. Forget that.
Yep.
Look first at whether they have the potential to be leaders. Yeah.
Yep.
That's reasonably easy to measure if you're comfortable with a little bit of intuition on some qualitative research. It's not a difficult thing to do. But manage that potential then. Once you've identified them as having potential, do what you can to increase that potential. Train them in how to set objectives, how to deliver feedback, how to deliver coaching, how to manage poor performance when they need to, how to have a painful curiosity about people, know what motivates individuals, all of that stuff. It's not, again, much like coaching, it's not difficult to do. You've just got to put a little bit of time into it, but it's about spotting that potential and amplifying it rather than trying to find this absolutely perfect candidate. Find the potential and do what you can to push it.
You touched though there on sort of setting objectives or setting goals that's going in this space.
Yeah.
What's the relationship between setting goals, objectives, and tying in the learning needs? What approach would you advise leaders on how to go about doing that with their team?
So to me, objectives are a really, really important thing. It's a way of getting everybody else really aligned, or everybody in your team really aligned on, here's the direction we're going. And if we all feel like we're going in the same direction, we can do wonderful things together. If objectives are well set and there aren't too many of them and they're weighted correctly, everybody knows the direction that they're going in, which means they know what to prioritize. They know what they should be putting their effort into. So they start to understand these are the skills and the knowledge that I need to have that are really important around here. And these are the skills and knowledge that I have that maybe I'm not going to get an opportunity to use in this business or maybe aren't as important.
Yep.
So it allows people to prioritize, and it allows you as a leader to go, and if I need them to do this, well, then I probably need to train them in this because that's a capability gap. This comes back to what you were talking about with the gaps on capability earlier. That's a capability gap, and I can train them or coach them or improve them in some way in relation to that thing. Does that make sense?
I think the build I'd add to that would be when they've got learning on an area that's completely new to them, where they're completely blind, it will take the leader to give them a bit of a nudge as to what that could look like, because they just got zero answers or zero exposure to work through. I think the way to do that is to actually find, though, how do those individuals love to learn, so that it starts to bring that fear factor or that anxiety down. And I know you've spoken about fear and anxiety when learning. Can you just give us a take on that, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a relationship between learning and change, right? The only reason you're learning something new is because you're trying to change something, whether it's your behavior or your knowledge or your skill or whatever it is, you're trying to change something. And with that change, every single change comes a fear of failure. That's just innate in us. That's how we do. And that fear of failure will often make us step away from the learning opportunity, procrastinate about the learning opportunity. I don't want to go over there and deal with the nasty change. Yep. But one of the things that makes that easier, as you said, is to get your head around the types of learning formats that work for that individual. Yeah, we've seen a lot of that recently, and by recently I mean in the last 20 years. That's how old I am. But I remember my dad talking to me, and he was quite a handy guy. He used to build a lot of stuff. He was a half decent carpenter, a decent electrician, a good mechanic. He was just good with his hands. And he discovered YouTube. And he was like, man, if YouTube had been around when I was in my 20s, I would have been unstoppable, because anything I need to know now, I'm just like, I'll look it up on YouTube. Even he said there was a skill involved in that. You had to know which was the right YouTube video, not which one was the bullshit one where the guy was just skipping over all the stuff that was too hard. But then we saw the advent of TED Talks, where, rather than going and having a university degree, you can get 18 minutes of learning here, which surprisingly enough is the average human attention span. It really is. That's why TED Talks are 18 minutes long. But you've also seen a drift away from traditional learning, like universities, where some folks will go, and by the time I get my degree, 4 years later, everything I've learned is kind of outdated. And to me, that's not the university's fault. That's just how quick the world is moving at the moment. I think the universities could do a little more to keep up, but that's a topic for a different podcast. But I think, if you can give people learning opportunities, whether those are online, remote, face-to-face, whatever suits them, I think you've got a much better chance of getting that training across the line and filling those capability gaps that you're talking about.
Rob, I've absolutely enjoyed this session with you and getting to understand what we can do to, I love your phrase, unstoppables, what we can do to unlock those unstoppables. For me, is there anything you'd love to add as final thoughts for the listeners there, Rob?
I think it's pretty easy for us to fall into a trap of thinking that talent is something that we've got to go out and hunt for. But really, I think what you need to do is just throw up a flag and go, this is who we are as an organization. Yep. And if that flag's attractive to you, come play. and if it's not, well, maybe we're not for you, and that's cool. But I think we need to be much, much more honest about, here's what we stand for. And if that works for you, please jump aboard. And if it doesn't, that's cool too. We'll see you somewhere else. Yeah.
Love it, Robin. And for our listeners, please remember, you have a shot to help another human being get ahead in life. Think about who's helped you to get to where you are today and maybe pay it forward. So thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, comment, and keep that feedback coming. See you next time.
See you soon.